So, about that epic fight, yeah, it never really happened, as you can imagine. In fact, we didn't fight. We joined forces. I have officially now joined the Octalysis Group as the head of engagement strategy in Europe. And here's the real story and what it means for you as engagers and perhaps even the gamification community. So if you've been listening to this word gamification and you know anything about gamification beyond, sort of reading it in the news or whatnot, you have almost certainly heard about the Octalysis framework. And there are very good chances that you've also heard about the Octalysis Group. The Octalysis Group is basically a premier consulting firm specializing in gamification design, based, of course, on the Octalysis framework. And I have to get used to saying we are helping organizations worldwide unlock human motivation through behavioral insights. The Octalysis Group has a fantastic, proven track record across multiple industries that span from finance, healthcare, education, and the Octalysis Group delivers measurable results that drive engagement and performance. And for years, I've respected their work. In fact, if you've been a student of any of my gamification classes at universities in both master's and bachelor's level, you've probably heard me not only talking about the Octalysis framework and probably doing a homework around the Octalysis framework, but you've also heard me talking about the single biggest gamification specialized consultancy in the world, which is the Octalysis Group. And I also realized that, talking about this and mentioning this, if you've seen classes with me, you've heard me talking about the Octalysis Group. I realized that we're pursuing essentially the same mission. It's all about the same things that we're after, although through, of course, slightly different angles. Yet, after spending some time in this annual retreat of the Octalysis Group together in Dubai, if I was already sure, I had already made up my mind, this completely clicked and put everything together. This was not just about a rivalry that, to be fair, I don't think there's any rivalry overall in the gamification community. We tend to be very collaborative. It was precisely about that. It was about timing. It's about the right team, the right time, the right alignment, because I definitely love everything about being able to run things independently. There's many benefits, and you've seen me sort of do my own thing and do this, do that, switch here, pivot there, and that is fantastic. I absolutely love that part. However, through these interactions and all that I've seen already in the Octalysis Group, I realized, working up close, it showed me what collaboration could actually multiply. That topic that we talk about so much in gamification as well as, there's competition, there's also collaboration. And I've seen that collaboration working up close. In fact, this annual retreat, there was a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of collaborative work happening right there. So joining forces just made absolutely perfect sense. And well, obviously now me saying this, if you're thinking that you're needing some gamification in your project, please do reach out. I'm leaving a link down in the description and we can figure out if we are the right fit. So I've mentioned what are some of the things that it means in terms of the changes it's going to be for me in my professional experience. However, I also want to make sure I talk about what are the things that do not change, especially about the Professor Game podcast. This show is, has been, and will always remain free and independent. We will not be charging for any of the episodes on the podcast, and we will also not be, beyond potential sponsored episodes, which we always disclose, we will not be a show that is dependent on this or that company. We will remain independent. We'll continue to interview experts just because of all the insights that they might bring for your experience, for you to become better at doing gamification at whatever level you are achieving that. We'll have the same cadence. Maybe there might be some changes coming here and there, which I've been thinking about for a while, but always with the same practicality. We're always going to be aiming for exactly the same thing. There's not going to be any hidden influence. And if I ever am going to talk about it, an Octalysis Group project or a specific approach or anything of that sort, I will definitely be very clearly stating this, just like I just did. If you're looking for an Octalysis Group project, reach out to me and I'll definitely be able to hear you out and see if there's a right fit. I'm clearly saying that it's about the Octalysis Group or any gamification project. To be completely transparent, I'm happy that if it's not a good fit for working with the Octalysis Group, to refer you to somebody else. I'm always happy to do that. We will always be, as a show, we will remain to be absolutely neutral. What are things that may sort of evolve, not change, but turn into better or have sort of different approach or lenses? You will more probably be hearing me speak more of the Octalysis language or lenses in many ways, because it's going to be the kind of things that I am already doing daily when talking to clients, doing design work, working with people by creating gamified structures and projects and apps and so on. I am definitely using that in a day-to-day. So I will very probably be using those concepts some more, just because it is going to be more part of my daily language. I might be talking about the core drives, the strategy dashboard, the player types, the way that the Octalysis Group uses them for client work, design loops. They're basically lenses to make sense out of the work that we are doing at the Octalysis Group. Sometimes I might share stories about the Octalysis Group, always again with disclosure, focused on how it can be useful for you. And you might remember from other episodes where I've disclosed, so to speak, my professional transitions in many ways. You might remember that when this all started, and for several years, I mentioned at the start that I work at IE Business School as a staff member and also as a professor, IE being a top business school in the world, like with online MBAs and MBAs. The online MBA, in fact, has been consistently in the top number 1, number 2 for many, many years. And that was a stage of my life that actually kicked off in many ways my gamification career. And when that changed, I remained being, and I'm still affiliated to IE Business School as an adjunct professor. And then I made a transition towards Ironhack. You might also remember that from that past episode where I made this reveal where I got a product manager role at Ironhack, talking to B2B clients. I always brought in sort of my edge of gamification in many ways. In fact, you might remember that I did a Lego Serious Play internal workshop with them. I had a lot of fun. It was a great experience working at Ironhack. I had a huge learning curve there. I'd never formally been a product manager, and sort of the product mentality has brought a lot to my plate that now I use, in fact, daily. And you might be hearing a little bit more about this sort of product mentality, might or might not be hearing more about this product mentality in the future, to finally making the most recent transition you heard of before this one, which was going and saying, I'm not going to wear the suit and be corporate anymore, so to speak. I was never a suit, or you can say maybe IE was a bit more corporate. Ironhack was definitely in sort of startup to scale up mode, so definitely not corporate. But leaving the 9-to-5 life to entirely dedicating myself to my teaching, to workshops, to consulting through Professor Game. And I've been doing that for over 2 fantastic and super rewarding years. You've seen me pivot in different ways professionally within Professor Game with those consultancies, those workshops. In fact, I'll continue teaching probably, and I'll continue to deliver workshops here and there, but I will not be actively pursuing those opportunities anymore now that I am at the Octalysis Group. And I have had a lot of fun doing all this stuff here. And you've probably seen me as well having this sort of new tilt towards talking about gamification for community building. It's been a wild ride in every single possible way. I've enjoyed it a lot, and I'm sure I will continue to now with this new transition. And to be fair, this wasn't sort of the first approach, not even just by Yukai. As you know, Yukai was you might know he is episode number 1, very epic way to start the podcast. Not just by an Octalysis professional, the founder of the Octalysis and the original creator of the Octalysis framework, Yukai Chao, but broadly through the Octalysis Group. I've been following Octalysis as a framework for many years. I've been an enthusiast in many ways. I use it in my classes. You've probably heard me talking about it. But in 2017, they did an Octalysis design challenge, which I joined just out of, honestly, at that time, I was just thinking like, let me practice my skills using Octalysis and see what I can achieve. I was very curious. Very oriented towards doing more work in gamification and perhaps have something to showcase in the future. You can check that out in the links. I might cringe a little bit when you read it or when you look through it. It was very early work. Keep in mind, I was very non-visual oriented at the time, so to speak. So bear with me if you go through that. And I was a finalist with that work that I did there. I do think it was not very visual, which was one of the things that was not great about that work that I would say. But I do think it was very thoughtful, and that was probably a great reason for me to have become a finalist. And the sort of the reward of becoming a finalist was getting an interview with the now CEO of the Octalysis Group, Joris Bearda. And we went into an interview of sorts. It's also true that my mindset there was not towards getting that role, so to speak, because I had just been promoted at IE Business School, and I was not looking for a switch in any way. It had been like a month since my promotion, I think, if my memory doesn't fail. And it was probably not the best timing for me to be thinking about moving on professionally somewhere else. But we had a lot of fun. I got some good and interesting feedback from Joris. You know, you can still see that challenge lying around over there. And that was one of the times where we kind of spoke about this. But again, I was not actively pursuing being in the Octalysis Group, and you know, they were recruiting, and there was a lot of people who were in that potential. In fact, the winners of that are actually currently consultants at the Octalysis Group, and future winners as well. And more recently, as you might recall, we had an interview with Yukai about his latest book called 10,000 Hours of Play, which I then wanted to talk with Yukai about. We had several things to discuss, and sort of naturally, I'm not even sure exactly how it happened. I don't have a recording of the it was not an interview. And it came up like, well, you know, how about joining the Octalysis Group, sort of joining forces, not Professor Game as the podcast, but me as the professional who is basically Professor Game podcast is me, at least at this point. So how about joining forces in some sort of way? And I had already made up my mind, like we had gone through all of the movements and so on. But after actually getting to meet in person the whole team in Dubai in this annual retreat organized by the Octalysis Group and doing some collaborative work inside, I knew there was sort of no coming back. I knew I was in the right place with the right people. These are people who get it. And sometimes you might feel in gamification, and I know this because I know most of the top professionals as well, that it can feel like a slightly lonely journey because we tend to be sort of independent freelancer professionals here and there. And sometimes you might feel like, well, yeah, I would benefit from having a sparring partner, somebody else to talk to. And that is just one small piece of the huge benefits that I am excited about when working with the Octalysis Group. There's other people there who are working through the same methodology, the same types of clients, the same vibe. And culturally, it's something that aligns very, very well. I'm loving the experience that I'm having inside of the Octalysis Group. So just to recap, the 3 principles going forward for me are very strong clarity. Like I'll always disclose anything about the Octalysis Group if they're involved in any way. The episodes will definitely remain, as always, very practical, very actionable for you. And this is not a pay-to-play kind of situation. It's not pay-to-play to listen to the podcast or hear or see these episodes. It is not pay-to-play to be interviewed on the podcast. We do this because we believe that these are professionals that have something to bring up for your journey and for your own inspiration. And if you're considering the Octalysis Group for some initiative, anything, the Octalysis Group and gamification in general, reach out. We'll explore it. I'm leaving a link down in the description so that we can actually get in contact if you feel like it. And if you're new here, just follow the show. The same cadence, same practicality. So that's the truth behind the epic fight. We're not rivals at all. We're actually just becoming partners. This is a new chapter, same mission. Making engagement practical, of course, ethical, and also effective. Sometimes the best battles end up in alliances, and that is exactly what happened here. So something else that is not going to change is that I always wrap up the episodes with what I'm about to say, because as you know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over.